Thanks for joining me today, Damien.
No worries.
So your database of AI hallucination cases have gained quite a lot of attention recently. Did you expect it to go as viral as it has?
Not really when I started a year ago, but I mean, there is some kind of yeah, it's not entirely sometimes, how to put it? Yeah, there has been times where hallucinations have been in the national headlines, and so people find the database, and then sometimes we're in more quiet, etc. I think 2 months ago there was one big law firm that got caught with hallucination, and that started a whole new conversation, etc., etc. So it comes and goes. The interest in this topic, even though, yeah, in the meantime and in between, I'm still trying to collect as many cases as I can.
You told me that there have been kind of different reactions from the US and from EU regarding the press. How have the press responded differently to your database?
So that's quite interesting. I think from the American journalists, there is a willingness and some kind of amusement in going after the lawyers who manage to find themselves in this context. There is also an interest into how, when we're dealing with self-represented litigants, hallucinations are an issue, but also that should not hide the fact that AI can be very useful for people who represent themselves. EU and on the EU, I mean, it's kind of a cliche, but they see it much more as a confirmation that AI does not work, AI has no role to play in the law, um, and to some extent, they're also not entirely sure how to approach a problem. That's also because EU cases are harder to track down. Sometimes they're compared to US or Canadian or basically Anglo-American tradition. A lot of the EU cases, you would not deal with the subject in the context of a judgment. You would do it through professional forums or in between the attorneys, but the judge would not be the person ringing the alert here. And so it's harder, I guess, for the non-American journalists who are used to everything being in public, getting a final judgment at the end of the day that really settle things and to send a message or whatever, to wrap their head around something that is proceeding more in the shadows in the EU legal profession.
Do you think overall it's a positive development that lawyers are using AI so much as they obviously are?
Yeah, yeah. I think in general so technology is amazing and very impressive. I mean, I've been doing natural language processing and data analysis of legal data sets for the past 10 years. And what we have achieved and what large language models have achieved in the past 4 years is incredible. And there are so many things that we can do. I mean, from an academic point of view, that I can do now that I could not do at all. And then from a practical, professional point of view, AI is really wonderful in allowing a lot of things to be done and to be done to a higher level than what it used to do to be. I'm thinking, for instance, of the fact that AI helps, for instance, smaller practices to take on big cases against bigger practices. AI helps a lot of people to get up to a certain level, etc., etc. AI is super helpful for me, particularly in terms of I've got a lot of cases that are ad hoc, one-off, kind of very complicated cases that require not a tool, but really something that is tailored for this kind of case and data management. And so AI helps me a lot in this respect. And so, and in the context of a normal law firm or normal legal practice, there is so many things that can be automated that could have been actually automated for a long time. But AI really helped bootstrap a lot of people to finally start automating things that should that are not interesting from the point of view of being a lawyer. I mean, so the first thing I teach my student when I law students when I teach in coding is rename file names. because I know that every intern out there, not every, but a lot of different interns out there, they at some point will spend a night renaming files, which is a very stupid way to learn anything. I mean, you're not learning anything. So yeah, it's great in this respect. Now, is it perfect? Absolutely not. Does it need to be handled properly? Yes. How to do that? Well, we're still learning and discovering day after day. There's a lot of different failure modes. There's a lot of ways that could go wrong, new ways that could go wrong, old ways that could go wrong. So it's fascinating to see it developing in a lot of ways. But in the future, the direction of the future, I'm very optimistic that AI will help lawyers focus on what makes them lawyers and not necessarily spend time on very annoying things.
I think it's interesting to draw a parallel to the software industry. Nowadays, there are many software developers who are not coding anymore
Yeah.
because AI agents can do everything for them. Do you think law is in a similar trajectory, like looking ahead 5 years, 2 years, for however long? Will lawyering be done by super intelligent AI agents? Is it something you are concerned about, like I am a bit?
No, so two answers to that question. The first is so I code, I develop software myself. I use agents, and I can see that yeah, they're wonderful. They can do a lot of things. That still requires a lot of supervision. Anytime you're trying to do anything more complicated than a one-page website statically, you have to start to think of the structure of how the data is managed and to make sure that it's robust, stable, et cetera, et cetera. And all of that still require a lot of human think. And so you still need humans. Second, I'd say software and coding in general is a great field for AI. First, because there is so much data. So that's why it's much easier to build a software developing tool compared to a legal tool because the data is all there. Second, and even more importantly, that's data and things that can be checked immediately. As in, if your code does not run, it does not run, and you know it from the get-go. I mean, you can have some kind of hidden bugs or exploit in there, but more generally, if you have the confirmation that what you're building works immediately, law is not a field like that. You don't have a confirmation that whatever you did is good until you get a confirmation that what you did is good. And that confirmation could take years. And so we're not dealing at all with the same thing. Third, what's great is that a lot of people will be able to get legal material, get legal output, legal advice for not necessarily free, but for much cheaper, which in general I think will increase demand for qualified legal advice, the one that comes with a lawyer, because lawyers comes with responsibility, lawyers comes with helping checking that things are right, lawyers help with navigating and guiding whatever the AI has given you to keep at context, etc., etc. So I'm very optimistic for the legal enterprise. And then the final thing is that law, to a large extent, to a much bigger extent than software engineering, is adversarial in nature. And so whatever you do will be challenged or try to be exploited by other people. That's true in software engineering as well. You are trying to make sure that your software or your application cannot be hacked, breached, or anything like that. And this kind of security thing requires people maintaining whatever you're doing all the time. So even if you got agents, people need to be there because they need to be aware of the dynamic of attack and offense. This will be even more true in the legal sector. The moment someone is known to delegate everything to an AI agent, to an AI legal agent, someone on the other side will do all they can, and I'm sure they will be able to find a lot of things to make that AI agent trip. And I don't think you will ever be comfortable delegating everything to an AI agent unless you're comfortable being exploited and gamed, which will not happen. And so you will always need humans only to take care of that dynamic part of the legal craft. Does that mean that means that the way you practice law might have to change? It will be much more kind of dealing with this kind of different strategies, delegating to AI agent, to humans that dedicate to AI agents, kind of orchestrating everything. Definitely, there is a lot of things that can be delegated. Even drafting can be delegated. I mean, pressing one keystroke after another. When you think about it, it's a lot of time that maybe you don't need. There are other ways. I mean, we can go back on this, but I think you should be writing by yourself a lot, despite text being cheap, but still, it remains that a lot of things that can be that have to be written fall into the category of things that no one will ever read and can probably be written by AI to save time and do it better than it would otherwise do. So again, times are interesting. We're developing, we're trying to find new ways to do things, but does that mean that lawyers will be replaced or that AI can do everything or whatever? No, that's not a story I believe in.
Something I thought about over the past few years. I've noticed this cultural difference between Europe and the US regarding technology. When it comes to AI, the US are generally, like broad generalization, much more optimistic and much more on board with the new technologies. Whereas in Europe, we tend to be more suspicious of new things, more reluctant to use AI. Is this kind of technology shyness something that the EU will need to overcome, or do you see some sense in it to take this more passive approach to AI?
Um, well, it's hard to answer this question because it's so it's I mean even if we overcome that, there is a resulting framework of everything we do to slow any kind of AI deployment or whatever. I mean, the norms are here and they have been adopted for a lot of different reasons. It's beyond the attitude, which I think is right for a part of the population and part of the decision makers. This kind of fearfulness. At the end of the day, the difference are to a large extent downstream of the regulatory frameworks. The US, again, there is no federal AI legislation, and the different states are very different in how they approach it. Some we could be trusted to be as annoying as the EU in this respect, some will be, but this kind of competition in the US helps keep the regulatory framework in general lighter. And that's at the end of the day what helps whatever needs to be going. That plus the huge and deep capital market of the US. That's a standard take on this as the concept. We can discuss differences in attitude, which I think are true to an extent. But at the end of the day, the difference in technology adoption and creation in the US and Europe comes down to two things: norms and capital markets. And then in the EU, well, we've got difference in terms of, for instance, language. We tend to forget that large language models are built for the largest part on English language. They work okay on non-English if that's close enough from English, but ask anyone from a minority language, and they tell you, yeah, there is a clear difference in quality from English to, I don't know, Croatian or some kind of dialect that you got somewhere. And so that doesn't help to build the trust that people should have with these tools. Um, so, so, so that's part of it. But still, every lawyer I talk to here in France, for instance, is aware of AI tools, has tried AI tools. To some extent, they didn't work. Sometimes it didn't work because they were too early. They tried ChatGPT 3.5 2 years ago when, again, they did it in French, in context where it was not prepared to do that, and that didn't work. Now, we've got legal tech that if anything, are helping bridge these kind of things and incentivize people to try again, etc. And that will go into bringing the adoption levels, hopefully to the American kind of levels. But yeah, it's will to some extent we might have already missed past that opportunity to build some kind of some good things in Europe. I mean, Legora is Swedish, so at least you got that. But again, deep capital market in Sweden. But on top of that, the regulations there they are completely crazy, and I talk for experience. Developing even AI tools in the context of academia, I receive so much compliance bullshit that nobody's not ever going to read, not
Mm.
applicable to whatever we're doing, and so dispiriting to a large extent because you're just trying to do things that you think are right, and the standards, the basic approaches, we do not trust you until you fill out this paperwork that nobody will ever read. But if you ever have an issue, we will use that paperwork. I mean, the whole compliance issue is paradigm is kind of terrible for that. But yeah, I'm going out of my way here.
I don't think so. It's really a relevant point you make there. There's so much talk about EU's regulation versus innovation, and then at the same time, there's this digital sovereignty movement in the EU going on right now. We don't want the American cloud servers. We don't want the American AI models. Everyone should use Mistral from France.
Yeah.
Do you buy it?
No, no, I don't buy it. So, I mean, from the get-go, I'm kind of, so that's also what annoys me about all this kind of thing is that we are very good, and our politicians in particular are super good at slogans, at phrases, at things that the things sound right are good. I mean, at some point it was all about trustworthy AI, and we don't know what that is, but we'll find out, and or we will trust anyone to find out. This is very annoying. At the end of the day, people are just using it every day, find it trustworthy or not, and it doesn't mean you cannot regulate, but a lot of this regulation is downstream of people wanting to do something rather than looking into either an actual problem. So one of the things I believe very deeply is that it's not because something is new that you need a particular regulation for it. And I think for AI in particular, a lot of what we want to regulate can be done at the level of typical existing consumer protection, tort law, etc., etc. You don't have to add a layer that maybe for the safety thing, I get the point. I mean, that's important to do something, but for the rest of it, just leave people be people, and they will soon adapt to the new things. But then the sovereignty thing is again a slogan, and but that's also a slogan that I think, in particular, a lot of the time is actually detrimental to a lot of what we do. I've got a friend here who is a legal director of a big French company, and he tells me the French government keeps coming to them and say, you need to put your data and Europe own servers. It's not even Europe servers because all the big ones, Amazon, Google, etc., they've got servers in the in EU. Sometimes I mean, there's a whole question of parallelizing and the privacy shield or whatever. Anyhow, that's usually they have servers in Europe, but they're like, yeah, we also need you to be on the EU own kind of things. And my friend replies to them, but you don't understand. When we talking about security, there is only one game in town, and that's AWS or maybe Google. But if we go to a EU player, they simply don't have the technical capabilities and the depth of a tech stack to ensure that our data is safe. And again, and one thing that's particular is that the politicians in Europe are very much about privacy. That's the only things learned about. It's a mystery to me. The emphasis on privacy is so much of a mystery to me. People don't care about privacy. They care in general if you ask them, but reveal preferences. They give the data away all the time for good reasons. You get so much from giving away your data on the internet. But and so the politicians are like very much focused on this idea of someone being able to find private data when the big threat is not private data ever escaping from these kind of servers. I mean, maybe some are sensitive, but at the end of the day, private data is worth nothing only for advertisers. No, the big threat is an external actor stealing all your data and stealing all your trade secret and all these kind of things. And so again, my friend from the big company was like, we cannot go to a French firm, which maybe will you be happy because you feel we are more sovereign or whatever. But at the end of the day, at some point, an external actor will be able to hack and get everything. And if we do that, if we go to a French actor, what does that mean? That means, well, hiring 30, 40 engineers starting to have a full career path for them, trying to build again some things that Amazon have been doing. I mean, it makes no sense commercially and also makes no sense in terms of security. And I think that's a lot of what, when you look at sovereignty things, that's a lot of this. You're trading usually worse products just for a vibe or because you're afraid that the American will spy on your private data. I mean, there are real concerns in terms of spying and etc. There are also false concerns in terms of companies reneging on the things or stealing all the things. But the best, I think, proves that what I'm saying is actually right, is that at the end of the day, all the actors going about digital sovereignty do not believe in it. They do not believe in it. They still contract with the big American firms because they know that they are the only ones that are able to deliver what they want. And if they really believed in digital sovereignty, at some point they should put the money where their mouth is and say, okay, we don't want Microsoft Word. The open source will never work by itself because there is no the business model is not good enough. But we will pay a lot of money to anyone who is able to replicate Microsoft Word, and they don't do that. They
Hmm.
don't do that. Why don't they do that? I mean, they could, but to a large extent, it's because Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel are already there and they're already working well. And again, I think if you really wanted to build European champions, well, you'll do a Buy America for the EU or something like that. I don't think it's a great solution. I think you'll get with worse off products, you'll get some fragmentation. But the fact that we don't have that just tells me that digital sovereignty or whatever is just a slogan that for some reason people think are important to win votes or at least to please part of the elite that were listening to it. But yeah, that's not being acted upon in the real domain.
There's a lot of talk in the news these days about token maxing, where companies pay ridiculous fees
Mm.
because they don't have a cap on the cloud code.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because these big AI labs need to recoup their investments. So there's no way around raising the subscription price. Do you see a movement for open source AI, for instance, for law firms, to go their own path, make a local AI setup where they don't rely on any of the American AI providers, or is that too far-fetched right now?
I think the big limiting factor here is capability. And I think it's a hard sell on most tasks to say we will settle for a less capable model just to cut on cost. And currently no, because if that's the truth, the less capable model that you want to pay less of, that would be an intern. You would, I mean, there is also this headline from a few days ago of someone saying, "I'm hiring people because AI costs too much," which might be the end of it. Because if you're, yeah, I think for a lot of tasks, you want the best product, and the best product is still the most advanced model from the most advanced AI lab served to you through an API. I do not discount some small local models or fine-tuned models or whatever to be good at particular task and be enough and you'll be happy with this and that will solve part of your issues. And I think uh, we will eventually, and if we don't see already a lot of this, that in the future there will be a room for this kind of smaller models, but for very specific task where the errors, the cost of errors will be very low. So there is that. But for a lot of things, people will just want the best, and you won't have. I mean, again, maybe in open source models are not closing in, but we know they got a bit of delay with the capabilities of proprietary models. Maybe this hiatus will close at some point, or maybe 2 years down the line, we'll have an open source model that is as good as what Opus 4.8 or GPT 5.5 is doing now, and that will be enough for people. Still, I think a lot of people will be saying that's actually not enough. We just want the guarantee of the best kind of things, and there is no way it's proprietary models will stay on the frontier here in this respect. But maybe no, maybe actually everyone will kind of stagnate at some point, and then that would be the real threat for the proprietary models. But even then, we also yeah, there is also questions of yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's possible. I mean, there is also a variable which is to what extent can we decrease the cost of token production, which we've done already. But the thing, the better models so far are in general, all things considered, bigger models. I mean, there is a lot of thing going with the kind of harness you put around it to get it better. There is a lot of things about the new architecture, etc., etc. But all things considered, you still need to host and serve a very big thing. And I'm not sure a lot of company will be willing to actually host and manage this kind of thing where you can just have an API. Because that's not the direction of history. It's just that everyone is relying on the cloud. And if you're just serving a model from a cloud-based solution, well, that's what the frontier labs are doing anyway. So is it possible? What might happen is that even if the open source model get to the level of the proprietary models, well, we'll just have competitions, and every one of these labs will reprice the token to the cost of the token production, and that might be something that will happen. But yeah, everything will depend on how big the difference between the open source and the proprietary model will stay. There is a world in which the kind of gap between the two remains where it is in terms of capabilities for a long time. And then in that scenario, for most tasks, I don't see the point of trying to build your own small model or whatever.
If you had the chance to give advice to EU politicians who are responsible for EU's AI agenda, what would
Hmm.
your advice be? Would you say ditch all this digital sovereignty talk? We can't escape the American models, or how would you
No,
approach
not
it?
necessarily. I mean, I love for just for pure competition reasons to have good European actors on this field, and I mean, we already have the people at Mistral who are doing good job considering there are a lot of other models. There is also the academic kind of things that are going on, and that's great that we're doing all this. So I'm not. I think and maybe people will disagree, but I think the American labs are much better. The Chinese labs are even are good too, and I prefer working with them as a matter of they're just better. But that's not destiny, and maybe they get better in this respect. Or they'll find competitors in this respect. But no, I think what the regulators and the EU people should be doing is there was recently from the Law and AI Institute this idea that instead of trying to regulate pre-ante and doing it through whatever framework they're thinking and being very much influenced by academics that nobody should listen to, me included, they should at least, and for the time being, at least build capabilities in terms of being able to understand what's going on. So the AI office, they want to build an AI office. Okay, be my guest. More public servants, yeah, sure, but at least pay good people with good money so that whenever actually there is an issue going on, and a real issue, not a kind of dreamed up issues or some kind of things that goes into the airline, but a real issue, and mostly I think the real issue will be in terms of safety. These people are ready to act and to go after the different actors to get to the bottom of it and make sure that whatever is doing is actually safe. And that would be a good way to do it on top of academic research, because if there is a place where the public actors can work is in in helping. I mean, that's one of the things that is kind of the blind spot, is that a lot of the research in the research these days is being done by the labs themselves, which they do very well. I mean, the folks at Anthropic are giving out a lot of incredible research, including sometimes research that goes a bit against their purpose, and that's super well, and etc. But how long will that last? Having academic teams, and we already have that in Europe, but I think there's room to double down on this. People able to work on these models, even if they are American models, able to find out the ways they work, the ways they don't work, etc. That's what I see. It's the best way for the public actors to stay relevant here and not set up something like the AI Act, something that is outdated from the moment it is enacted, and something that just annoys everyone because we don't know how to navigate it for very little a positive outcome. I mean, the cost benefit thing on that thing is terrible.
Okay, Damien, thank you for sharing your perspective here. It was really great to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm just a guy with opinions, and it's a bit out of my. I'm not an expert in public policy. I'm not even an expert in AI law. I'm just a guy who is a lawyer and read about this kind of thing from an external perspective and also from a builder perspective. Again, I've seen the kind of questionnaire that the AI Act leads to, and that's the stuff of nightmare. And I've got in general a kind of informed view on this kind of thing, but I'm not an expert and don't take what everyone's saying more than pure opinion. What I'm an expert on is more like who I expect legal practice to change and not change in the future, and how AI will impact all this. And I come back to my main conclusion, which is it will get interesting, and we are just at the beginning, and that yeah, a good few years are coming. Few good and bad. I'm sure there'll be a lot of bad examples of things going wrongly. I'm definitely sure of this. But I'm kind of and even when says as I could cause a lot of grief and everything, to some extent that's life, and you have to you have to brace yourself. If you can avoid things from the get-go, wonderful. But if it's at the cost of preventing anything, well, again, we're talking cost benefit analysis, and that to conclude, that's where my take on the legal framework comes in. I'm not sure the cost benefit we have in Europe is its analysis is turning out well for all the kind of frameworks that we're laying out these days.
Can you explain what your advice is to your law students when it comes to using AI in their practice? Should they try to up and become technical, or how should they think about it in their future careers?
One of my advice is to get technical, but I give that advice to my students, not to all lawyers. I don't think everyone needs to learn to code, but I think it's first super fun and great to be able to know that. In general, technology is all around us and it can seem like magic to a lot of people, and I'm just trying to convey that it's not magic, but it's still as interesting. There are so many wonderful things, very weird technical problem that someone at some point solved in a way that's very that's great from the point of view of appreciating human ingenuity. And so that's where I come from when I say get technical. It's really the ability to see that we are where we are in modern world with a lot of things because a lot of people thought about technical issues, and these technical issues are great, and you can adopt a kind of technical mindset to a lot of different things that you did not think about earlier. And that's why when I say I teach coding to law students, what I'm teaching is mostly automation. And automation is what you can do once you take this kind of mindset of think, okay, what lends itself well to automate? But also, this mindset, I think, is an entryway to understand what cannot be automated and what will remain with the human to some extent, at least, and what is often the most important part and the funniest part of whatever we're doing, the kind of thing that only us as human, because of our dynamics, because of what we're doing, will be important. And so I try to reassure my students that they will have a job, even if a different job, by going over what I already mentioned here in terms of the increase of legal demand, but to the fact that there will always be need for human or whatever, but their place in there will be actually, yeah, to be that human doing this human only thing that only they can do, and for the rest to try to see the rest as technical problems that can be solved, that will be solved, if by them, even better. But you can always find new problems and new things to do. So that's why that's what I'm telling them to stay optimistic about. There is always more things that can be done.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.